Every few years we hear about a new, crazy story of how the world is going to end. A prophetic Mayan calendar, an asteroid that might hit Earth, or a biblical apocalypse. But so far, all the prophecies were completely harmless and could be laughed off easily. However, there was one of these cases that was taken strangely seriously. Back in 1965, Chan Thomas wrote a book in which he described a specific world-ending scenario. At first, this might sound like any ordinary fiction book about a dystopian future. But when this book was about to be released, something strange happened. Before anyone was allowed to read it, the CIA literally confiscated this book and kept it a secret for 50 years. Only when people demanded for the book to be released under the Freedom of Information Act did it finally resurface. But something was strange. According to the author, his book had 284 pages when the CIA confiscated it. Now it only has 55 pages. Why did the CIA confiscate this book in the first place? And why did they feel the need to remove more than 200 pages from it? Together, we'll look at this book's history, conspiracies surrounding it, and if this story is even true. Today, the book can be found in the CIA Reading Room, a place where formerly classified documents are released to the public. The Adam and Eve story is the official title of this mysterious book, and as you can see, it was in fact written by Chan Thomas, proving that at least the part about the CIA confiscating his book is true and verifiable. The cover states that it is about cataclysms, which are great world-ending catastrophes. With that being said, let's take a look at what is actually written inside this book. Although I should note that I only quote his book, everything written in it should be taken with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to scientific explanations, biblical references, and conspiracies. Chapter 1 talks about a change in the Earth's poles. According to Thomas, this phenomenon happens regularly on Earth and always kicks off a cataclysmic event. Additionally, he claims that many civilizations were wiped out by this process. In this chapter, he also explains what happens after this change in poles. The first thing would be a short halt of the Earth's rotation. Since the Earth is spinning with speeds of 1,000 kilometers per hour, such an abrupt halt would be catastrophic. We don't feel this rotation because we are rotating with the Earth, since we are not bound to the Earth's surface, like, for example, the different continents. But if the Earth's rotation were to stop in a span of seconds, it would be comparable to a full brake while driving a car. Everything not directly connected to Earth itself would be sent flying. Oceans, forests, buildings, and of course, humans. The entire surface of the Earth would be destroyed in a matter of seconds. According to Thomas, one example of this event would be the biblical flood that once destroyed the planet and only spared Noah's Ark. But before we get into these realms, I will just read his scenario and you can listen to it. With a rumble so low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thundering roar, the earthquake starts. Only it's not like any earthquake in recorded history. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Nothing, but nothing, stops the relentless, overwhelming onslaught of wind and ocean. Across the continent, the 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks its unholy vengeance, everywhere, mercilessly, unceasingly. Every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and the earthquake leaves no place untouched. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire to add to the Holocaust. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water, coast to coast. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of Pikes Peak watch the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow, piling higher and higher, steaming over the molten earth fire and rising almost to their feet. Only great mountains such as this one can withstand the cataclysmic onslaught. North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same cannonade: wind, earth fire, and inundation. South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the cataclysmic violence pounded out by nature in her berserk rage. In less than a day, Ecuador, Peru, and western Brazil are shaken madly by the devastating earthquake, burned by molten earth fire, buried under cubic miles of torrential Pacific seas, and then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, and mud are all rock hard in less than 4 hours. Europe cannot escape the onslaught. The raging Atlantic piles higher and higher upon itself, following the screeching wind eastward. The Alps, Pyrenees, Urals, and Scandinavian mountains are shaken and heaved even higher before the wall of water strikes. Western Africa and the sands of the Sahara vanish in nature's wrath under savage attack by wind and ocean. The area bounded by the Congo, South Africa, and Kenya suffers only severe earthquakes and winds, no inundation. Survivors there marvel at the sun standing still in the sky for nearly half a day. Eastern Siberia and the Orient suffer a strange fate indeed. As though a giant subterranean scythe sweeps away the Earth's foundations, accompanied by the wind, in its screaming symphony of supersonic death and destruction. As the Arctic basin leaves its polar home, Eastern Siberia, Manchuria, China, and Burma are subjected to the same annihilation as South America: wind, earth fire, inundation, and freezing. Jungle animals are shredded to ribbons by the wind, piled into mountains of flesh and bone, and buried under avalanches of seawater and mud. Then comes the terrible, paralyzing cold. Not man, nor beast, nor plant, nor earth is left unfrozen in the entire eastern Asian continent, most of which remains below sea level. East of the Urals, in western Siberia, a few lucky people survive the fantastic winds and quakes. Antarctica and Greenland, with their ice caps, now rotate around the Earth in the torrid zone, and the fury of wind and inundation marches on for 6 days and nights. During the 6th day, the oceans start to settle in their new homes, running off the high grounds. On the 7th day, the horrendous rampage is over. The Arctic Ice Age is ended, and a new Stone Age begins. The oceans, the great homogenizers, have laid down another deep layer of mud over the existing strata in the Great Plains, as exposed in the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, and Badlands. The Bay of Bengal basin just east of India is now at the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean, just west of Peru, is at the South Pole. Greenland and Antarctica, now rotating equatorially in the torrid zone, find their ice caps dissolving madly in the tropical heat. Massive walls of water and ice surge toward the oceans, taking everything from mountains to plains in gushing, heaving paths, creating immense seasonal moraines. In less than 25 years, the ice caps are gone, and the oceans around the world rise over 200 feet with the newfound water. The torrid zone will be shrouded in a fog for generations from the enormous amounts of moisture poured into the atmosphere by the melting ice caps. New ice caps begin to form in the new polar areas. Greenland and Antarctica emerge with verdant, tropical foliage. Australia is the new, unexplored continent in the North Temperate Zone, with only a few handfuls of survivors populating its vastness. New York lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, shattered, melted by earth, fire, and covered by unbelievable amounts of mud. Of San Francisco and Los Angeles, not a trace is left. Egypt emerges from its Mediterranean inundation new and higher, still the land of the ages. The commonplace of our time becomes the mysterious Baalbek of the new era. A new era. Yes, the cataclysm has done its work well. The greatest population regulator of all does once more for man what he refuses to do for himself, and drives the pitiful few who survive into a new stone age. Once more, the earth has shifted its 60-mile thick shell, with the poles moving almost to the equator in a fraction of a day. Again, the atmosphere and oceans, refusing to change direction with the Earth's shell, have wiped out almost all life. After this tumble, we join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, Mu, and Olympus, and Jesus joins Osiris, Ta'aroa, Zeus, and Vishnu. And there we have it, the first chapter of this book. A truly catastrophic scenario, all centered around pole jump, that would rotate the Earth in 890-degree angle. I'm no physicist, but I did some quick research if the concept of pole jump is even possible. There are several different opinions regarding a hypothetical pole jump. Some say that his scenario could be realistic, whereas others claim that we would definitely see early signs of such a large event. Either way, let's get back to the book. Going back to the biblical flood, Thomas is convinced that this is not just a story, but a real event that took place 6,500 years ago. He based this belief on the fact that scriptures from vastly different cultures and religions talked about a great flood that happened more than 6,000 years ago. These scriptures include the Bible, the Gilgamesh epos, the Dulcagnolic flood in Greece mythology, and the tale of Yu the Great from China. Despite all their differences and different locations on Earth, all these cultures agree on both the Great Flood and its time frame. Based on these stories, Thomas claims that this event has happened before and will thereby happen again. And of course, I don't have to say that these theories belong in the category of conspiracy theories and alternative archaeology. But this makes it even more interesting why the CIA felt the need to confiscate this book. Well, according to the CIA itself, they don't even remember why the book was kept a secret for so long. Neither do they know why it was confiscated in the first place. They claim that only when the public asked for the release of this book did they even remember its existence. This also serves as their explanation why it was classified for 50 years. They simply forgot about it, and no one cared for it. And while the CIA is not giving specific answers, there is one rather logical explanation for why the book was confiscated. You see, while Thomas's book was not the only one talking about the apocalypse, it was the only one actively attacking the godly beliefs of the Catholic Church. Back in the 1950s and 1960s, the CIA was packed with religious people who were possibly not amused by a man claiming that the biblical flood was not God's work, but just a physical anomaly. Think back to the last sentence of his first chapter. After this tumble, we join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, Mu, and Olympus, and Jesus joins Osiris, Ta'aroa, Zeus, and Vishnu. Here he actively compares Jesus to the gods of other religions and old mythology, a great sin in the eyes of every Christian. Additionally, he often compared Jesus to humans during later chapters, another concept that would anger highly religious CIA agents. It is not far-fetched that some random CIA agent was angered by his writing, and since he happened to have this power, he decided to confiscate this book. And since no one else really cared about this book, they did actually forget about it. I think that's a relatively simple and logical explanation as to why such a book might get confiscated. The only question that remains is why the book was missing so many pages. Well, the answer is pretty simple. The book never had more than 55 pages. If you search for modern prints of this book, they will often feature pages in the 200s. But the original book was always just 55 pages long. If you read these longer versions, you instantly notice that other people added their own theories to his original work, and you can clearly see the difference in writing. It was simply a good marketing scheme by claiming that your book features the mysterious lost pages of a book that was confiscated by the CIA. Now that this video is coming to an end, I want to share my personal opinion on the matter. After some research, I found out that Chan Thomas was everything but a man of science. His theories about pole jumps are completely made up and have no scientific background. Even though the concept is viable, his entire scenario is mostly viewed as a gross over-exaggeration of such an event. Most scientists are convinced that such an event would happen over a very long period of time and would mostly affect our technology. A true apocalypse based on such an event is rather unrealistic.